Is anybody here to accept the proclamation for Falun Dafa?
Yes.
So whereas Falun Dafa was founded by Master Lee Tongwei, who introduced its benefits to the public in 1992. And whereas Falun Dafa is an advanced exercise and meditation practice of mind and body with its core principles based on peacefulness, compassion, and forbearance. And whereas Falun Dafa advises that it transcends cultural and racial boundaries and contributes to the universal dream of a peaceful, tolerant, and more compassionate society. And whereas Falun Dafa advises that their practitioners embark on a peaceful grassroots efforts to adhere to their beliefs and deliver the truth to the people around the world. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Millburn and on behalf of Millburn Township residents do hereby congratulate Falun Dafa on their 20th anniversary of World Falun Dafa Day on May 13th, 2019.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, with Taryn, sure. Sure.
All good? All right. Everybody ready? Nope. One minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for all the support of Falun Dafa is also known as Falun Gong. It's an Asian meditation practice to improve your physical and mental wellness. It was introduced to New Jersey in 1996 and introduced to Millburn 2000. Ever since 2000, the local group we practice in front of the Bauer Community Center every Saturday and Sunday morning from 7 to 8. So you're welcome to join us. All of the teachings are free, and you can also get information from falundafa.org. All of the books and teachings are free as well. So please welcome to join us. Thank you very much for your support.
So, many communities have been giving a proclamation for the honor, and I do see you guys in Taylor Park, and it looks very beautiful and very calming, and maybe one day I will join you. Okay, and everyone should join. It's good for us. Okay, let's see. May I have a motion to approve the February 13th, 2018 Special Township Committee meetings?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? May I have a motion to approve the March 12th, 2018 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
You weren't there. I'll second it.
Okay. The three of us are in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the September 20th, 2018 Special Township Committee minutes?
Moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
No opposed. May I have a motion to approve the March 5th, 2019 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
May I have a motion to approve the March 5th, 2019 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
No, you can't second.
I wasn't there.
Okay. May I have a second from someone who was there?
You.
I was there.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the March 19th, 2019 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 No opposed.
Aye.
Okay. You opposed?
No, Sam wasn't there.
Sam wasn't there?
Which one, March 19th?
March 19th.
Abstained.
So
I'll
who?
move.
I'll second.
Okay. We approve? Any opposed? Okay. Reports. Oh, county representative. George? Not here. Okay. Well, I spoke to George, so I can speak for him. Okay, first, welcome everybody. And I want to give a big congratulations to the high school world robotic champion team. Yeah, and we will be and they will be here at the next Township Committee meeting with their coaches to receive an honor. And also a great job by the rec department. Gero Park had over 200 kids at the grand opening of the new playground. It'll be a terrific asset for a Little League season, for the little siblings, as well as throughout the whole year. Paving has begun on Parsons Hill Road and Old Short Hills Road. Unfortunately, this cannot be done at night. I have asked, this is when I spoke to George, our rep, I've asked him that we get better pre-notice from the county to send out information the day before as to what roads will be affected, and this way the town can share on the website, the Swift 911, and Twitter. It's really important that all the residents sign up for these services. We understand it's an inconvenience and we ask for your patience. We've also asked the contractor to place more detour signs where needed, and they have been visited the schools, and the schools have notified the bus drivers how the routes are affected, so they should be able to get around, and the police are able to wave them in if it's a partially closed road. They can get the kids. Millburn High on Millburn Avenue will be repaved this summer. The contractor is being instructed to get back into town and replace the asphalt that went bad. Something went wrong there. We are in the process of finalizing the Pedestrian Safety Committee ordinance. The first draft will be shared with the other committee members, and we can expect to discuss this at the next Township Committee meeting. There's a couple of tweaks we were finishing up. The Environmental Commission has been working with the Green Team. There have been 2 public outreach sessions about their desire to bring a resolution to the Township Committee to pass an ordinance to ban single-use plastic bags, plastic straws, and styrofoam-type takeout containers in the township. I was at both sessions. They had a really good attendance. This process is to educate and involve the merchants and the residents. There were really good comments, and I think my favorite was when a woman who spends a lot of time in Colorado said that she remembers in 2006 when they banned public smoking, the outrage. Oh, the restaurants would go out of business, the bars would be empty. Well, none of that's happened. So it's really about education, and there's just changes that we can make to improve things, and we're working on that. The Environmental Committee will continue to meet with the residents and the merchants to address their concerns and questions. And many residents, from what it seemed, and merchants are already taking very positive steps. The Environmental Committee is hoping that you will take a complimentary bag and take a personal pledge to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So I think there's about 30 bags left, so there's maybe more than 30 of you, so grab a bag. And please use it when you go shopping. The Environmental Commission does meet the second Tuesday of each month, and these meetings are open to the public, and you are all invited to come. It's at 7:30 in the conference room. They have spent a lot of time preparing their resolution. They've been looking at a lot of towns that have successfully done this, so there's a lot of data that they're working off of. They're not just pulling this out of the air. It's very well thought out. This afternoon, Alex and I met with Dan Aschenbach from Cranford and Maplewood Mayor DeLuca at Campbell's Pond to discuss the direction the Mayor's Rahway River Coalition should be advocating from the Army Corps of Engineers for further flood mitigation. Last month, about 25 of us met, and from all the Rahway River towns, it was the mayors, the town administrators, the New England Army Corps of Engineers, quite a few people from New Jersey DEP, the staffers from the governor's office, congressional office, assembly, and even Senator Cory Booker sent one of his staffers. And they all want to help us figure out the best route to go. Unfortunately, at that meeting, the Army Corps brought back the same plan from 4 years ago that suggested building a huge dam that was referred to as Little Hoover in the South Mountain Reservation, which entailed cutting down thousands of trees and relocating the road. In essence, reconfiguring the entire portion of the reservation that we all drive through. Not only would this be an environmental travesty, but that road could be impassable for up to 2 years. And all those cars that use the reservation would then be forced into our streets. So that's just not a good answer for Millburn. And what's even worse, the flood relief is minimal. So we're going to be meeting again probably towards the end of May, all the mayors, and working with the local and regional, figuring out a plan. The other thing is I had shared on my Facebook page, and I'm gonna ask Christine if she can put this on the town website, newjerseytransit.com/inform. This is the whole packet of what they're doing over the summer. I don't think it's gonna be the summer from hell that we had supposedly last year, but if you can go on this site, especially for you commuters, newjerseytransit.com, and Christine, you can put this whole reference number, and I think you'll be able to find out everything that's planned. And I just heard on the news today that they've hired like 40 new conductors, and that should make a big difference, because they said that was a big problem why some of our trains were late. We didn't have enough conductors. So all of this will be sorted out. And I think that is it for my reports. Yes?
I don't have a report.
Okay. Committeewoman Benjamin?
I just want to remind everybody, Mill Wheel's rolling into Millburn, September 7th. We are assembling a variety of community organizations, schools, and businesses. I think it's going to be a great day, so you can click on the website if you're a group or you're a nonprofit or anything that we had a pre-meeting earlier this evening that was very well attended. There'll be some more information going to be pushed out on the website for those organizations that are interested in participating. The deadline for the first pass is May 24th, which is 3 weeks away. So we encourage everybody to kind of get their designs out there. Thank you.
Committeewoman Prupus, any reports?
On April 26th, the PTOC Safety Committee met, and tomorrow is Bike Walk to School Day, so if you have the opportunity to bike or walk with your children to school, we encourage you to do that. And on June 12th is the Crossing Guard Honorary Breakfast, which all the schools help to support, and that's it.
Thank you. Committeeman Levy?
Yes, April 10, the Board of Rec Commissioners met and some largely technical discussions about fields, parks, facilities were addressed. Not worthy of reporting here, but all the facilities and fields are in play. Youth baseball, volleyball, fencing, t-ball, adult basketball are all in play now. Some dates: on April 27, the fishing derby took place. There were 3 golden trout caught, disputing the largely held rumor that there were never any golden trout in the thing. That myth is no longer. Special prizes for those who caught the golden trout. On June 18, the New York Yankees bus trip will take place. As of April 10, there were 4 spots left. I don't know whether they're still open now. On July 8, the Youth and Masters Par 3 tourney will take place, and admission is still open for that. Concludes my report.
Thank you. Alex?
Just 2 brief reports. One is a reminder to the community that we will be having a Memorial Day parade and ceremonies in the park this year on Saturday, May 25th, starting at 10 a.m. I hope that we can get the whole community out there to support this event. It's a great community event, and show our appreciation and patriotism toward all that. The other one is circling back to recycling, and a reminder to residents that plastic bags should not be in the recycling, that we should be making sure that our stream is clean and avoid contamination with a variety of items such as plastic bags, entanglements, wire, things like that. The township has signed up for an application on your smartphone, which is called Recycle Coach. I encourage residents to download that if you have a smartphone. It'll help you figure out when your trash days are, what recycling materials can be accepted, and other guidelines and tips when it comes to recycling. Again, that's Recycle Coach. It's an application that can be downloaded on the App Store or Google Play that is free of charge, and you can plug in our community and make sure that you help in that regard.
Is there a link to that on the website? Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. Attorney Falcone?
No report.
Okay, I left out one thing. This Saturday, May 11th at 7 p.m., there is Raise Your Voice, the Paper Mill Playhouse Broadway Show Choir concert, and we did see them in Taylor Park when we had the Mill Wheels, and amazing, like simply absolutely amazing. Wouldn't be surprised if these kids wind up on Broadway. So You can buy tickets at opportunityproject.org/donate. So, there it is. It's going to be terrific. Terrific. Okay. All right. Public comment. Oh, no. Yes. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or committee member reads from a prepared statement, please give her or email a copy to the Township Clerk's office at cgaddy@millburntwp.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We have a timer, and it does not buzz, but it does count up. So when you see you're approaching the 3-minute mark, please wrap up your comments. So everyone will get a chance to speak. Please.
That was easy. Good evening. I'm Maggie Miggins. I am here as the president of the Township Beautification League. And the Township Beautification League is a volunteer organization that was started by members of our community 40-plus years ago. We're responsible for the planters throughout town. We're responsible for the snowflakes. We're responsible for the daffodils and the islands. And we are strictly volunteer, and we rely on donations. So please open up your pocketbooks if you could. This Saturday, we will be planting over 160 planters throughout the community. And we've taken over the planters that used to be planted by the DMDA. So it is a lot of work, and we would love if anyone who's listening or anyone in the audience is available Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. We will be having all our volunteers meet up with us so we could do all the planters in one weekend just in time for Mother's Day. As I said, there's 160 planters, so we'd really appreciate that if anyone would do that. We will be meeting in the parking lot where the farmer's market usually is, by the clock. That's where we'll be meeting at 9 o'clock.
Okay, maybe we can push out a swift 911, Alex, and maybe get some more volunteers that way.
That would be great. We have some Boy Scouts.
Excellent.
We have members of the community from our garden clubs. We'd love any of you to show up. We'll all be there. And you know what? Many hands make light work. So the more volunteers we can have, we could just snap it up. And Krista Mosier, who's our plant lady, has worked really hard in procuring all of the plants. The guys at the in our township have very helpful. Everyone's been really helpful. So it would be great if we could get some volunteers for that. Okay.
Thank you.
1.48. Thank you.
All right. Before anyone else speaks, wait, I see George, our county rep, is here. So if you want to just give your report, we can squeeze you in. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay.
Just one announcement. Saturday, May 18th, Computer and Electronics Recycling Day between the hours of 9 and 3. Takes place at 99 West Bradford Avenue in Cedar Grove. So there's a list on the website of all the items that they'll be collecting on that day, as far as computers and monitors and any type of electronics. So that's what we have coming up. And follow up on what our discussion today. I'll go over the roadway reconstruction, which is underway. I'm sure everybody in town is aware. So the contractor made contact with the area schools to notify them of the closure, and so the bus routes can be acknowledged that that street will be closed, and accommodations could be made for drop-offs. Additionally, the contractor indicated that the detour signs are up and installed. And he did acknowledge that people should acknowledge those signs, because what they've noticed is people are seeing the cones, the detour signs, and going through, trying to do shortcuts, and that is a danger. It's a construction site, so people could just acknowledge that. They'd be, appreciate it, because they are working, and they just want to maintain safety while they're working.
Well, there's usually cops. Can they be ticketed for going through those cones?
They can.
So that's a deterrent. One ticket.
Yeah. So yeah, just keep in mind that it's stress on everybody, but it's something that we need. Everybody wants this done. We just want to get it done as quickly as possible. After they complete that street, they will move to Parsonage Hill Road, and they will start Old Short Hills Road, and they will start in the Short Hill section and then move into Livingston. So that'll come after they complete Parsons Hill Road.
Okay. And then after it's all paved, the striping starts?
Correct.
Okay, but that doesn't close the roads completely?
No, that doesn't take that long to do, and,
Okay.
and that shouldn't disrupt anything.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're in good shape. And I did announce that when we were speaking to Joe, that the high school, in front of the high school, is slated to be fixed this summer as well.
Yes, the DPW director has contacted the contractor. There was an issue with the asphalt, something in the process which caused that pitting. So they're working on having them come back and do it free of charge to redo that area. So
Terrific.
it's going to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
No? Anybody from the committee? Okay. Yes. No, he leaves. I'll tell you what, why don't you come up and ask and we'll relay it to George.
Yes, that's probably more appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the
Wait,
county.
just state your name.
Oh, Phil Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask the county representative if he was aware of the rising tide of criticism, not of the Turtleback Zoo itself, but of the expansion that's impinging on the South Mountain Reservation and also causing things like these pop-up lakes we have now as you drive down Brookside Drive.
I have to say I'm not aware of the issues you just mentioned. I am aware of there's issues regarding the expansion of the zoo. There is an application, but it's very preliminary as far as the new exhibit for the grizzly bears, I believe it is. And it's an application, doesn't mean it's going to get funded. It could take 3 years for that to even come to fruition. So I don't know much more about it than it's preliminary and only preliminary, and it's simply an application right now.
Right, and we discussed that you would try to find out what was exactly on the application, like,
Right.
Right.
I don't think it was solely, in fact, it wasn't solely for the zoo. There's, I think, other park properties that may be included in that application. I just found out about it in the last couple of days when we brought it up. I really did not know anything about it.
okay, so we'll
So
keep our eye.
I will, continually inform the town
But
of any.
why is it of any moment to the Millburn Township Committee the extent to which data in the application to increase the grizzly at the Turtleback Zoo is important to us?
Because our residents seem to be concerned about the amount of spending and the reservations on our property, and it affects flooding, and there's reasons. I know a lot of our residents have gone to the freeholder meeting and discussed it.
So they can address those issues at the freeholder meeting, not at a Millburn Township Committee.
Okay.
We have no standing to even object or render a comment on this.
Okay, well, everyone's free to,
Well, there's a chance to ask the representative, because
Right.
that's the reason he comes
Okay,
here. So it's a
right.
technical part from
It's-
if you wanted to know the answer.
right, and we're working on getting you an answer. Okay,
I'll do my best.
thank you, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, continuing with public comment. Please come up to the microphone, be mindful of the clock.
I think George had much more than 3 minutes. Josh Scharf, Short Hills, 11 Hawthorne Road. Some of you might have seen that over the weekend there was a report about Woodbridge Township catching 89 kids who did not belong in the district and collecting over $100,000 in back tuition and more to come. That's because Woodbridge, along with about a dozen other towns, had adopted an ordinance that would allow the township to claw back all tuition plus penalties, fines. The good news is that Millburn has been working on this ordinance since mid-March. I've been working with Jackie Benjamin and Diane Iglo.
That's
Si-
misstated.
No, it isn't.
The township is not working on an ordinance, Mr. Sharp.
Well,
You have, okay, I'm not going to argue with you.
well, I have the emails to show it, but and until April, you just took a few seconds away from me, but until April 4th, when Diane did a about turn, claiming that Mila J.C. and the town attorney had issue with it. And I have the email right here. Mila J.C.'s town has already adopted this ordinance, so she shouldn't have any objection to it. And the Township Council had no idea what I was talking about. Subsequently, I spoke to Sam about the adoption of this ordinance. there seemed to be an agreement, and Sam and I don't agree all that often, but that this should be included in today's agenda as a discussion item. And he communicated that to Diane.
No, that's not true. Okay. To be factually accurate, you requested it to be on the agenda, and I forwarded your request to Diane, to Ms.
Well, I have the email to
Mayor
say.
Eglos.
I have the email to say differently. Regardless,
Produce it.
regardless, it appears that Diane is dodging this ordinance, reluctant to even look at it at this point. There's been an about face. And certainly, I think as a community, this is a ordinance that is of value to the community, gives it a legal option. And one has to wonder what has happened that turned this thing around, and why Diane claimed that Mila J.C., who claimed that no knowledge of it, and the attorney had no knowledge of it, provided me with this email saying that it's turned around. So I would ask for an investigation as to why this is the case, and why Diane is hiding this kind of an ordinance. Now again, for Sam, I have the emails. I could show the emails, and you claiming that you already sent it to Diane for presentation of today's agenda. So, emails don't lie, do they?
No, they don't, but the person perpetrating the content of the emails may, which happening in this
Which I'd
case.
be more than happy to re-forward that email.
You can publish them on a billboard. My emails stand for themselves. But here's the point. What I had communicated with you is that I do not object to, and I express this to others, I do not object to an ordinance to serve as a deterrent for those who might be inclined to improperly register for classes facing only a tuition ban, because that's, and as
Excuse me,
proven.
we're going to talk about this under old business. We're going to get on with public comment, 3 minutes.
It's not on the agenda under old business.
You're right. If anyone of the committee people can bring up anything they want during old business, so they will have the option. So thank you, Mr. Scharf, and somebody else.
You're very welcome,
Okay.
Mayor Eglo.
Thank you.
And the chicken ordinance is working very well, so we could, I don't think there's one chicken that's been
Okay.
registered as yet, but that's okay.
Okay, next person for public comment, please.
My name is Peter Leipson. I live at 364 Wyoming Avenue. It came to my attention through the emails that there are short-term rentals that are cropping up in this town, better known as Airbnbs. And that there's been some possible ordinance has been proposed, I don't know whether they've been formally proposed, to limit this. I urge that when this does come up, that this board pass that legislation. They should limit short-term rentals to 6 months minimum, and they should not allow, first thing, when you have Airbnbs, you change the nature of a neighborhood. You don't know who your next door neighbor is from day to day, week to week. There's a big problem in New York City right now. The mayor has imposed extreme fines on people who rent apartments in buildings and then turn them into Airbnbs. The hotel industry is really up in arms because they have to comply with certain rules and regulations, and the people who run the Airbnbs do not. It also takes income away from them, and the hotels in New York are paying a lot of money to maintain their businesses and losing it. When you have an Airbnb, you compromise the safety of a neighborhood. You don't know who your next door neighbor is from day to day and week to week. I live on 364. We have a house, I call a house a church. It's called Our Lady of Perpetual Construction. This has been under construction for 8 years. It affects the value of my house. Well, if you have, instead of that, if you have a neighbor and then another neighbor and then another neighbor, you don't know who your neighbor is. It affects the safety of the neighborhood. I think it changes the nature of the town. And I just believe strongly that when that does come up for discussion, that this town limit rentals in this town to no less than 6 months. Now, there are other towns in the area that have provisions which allow it. When we had our house under renovation, there was an apartment building in Springfield, and they allow it because they were there. They were built with that in mind. They have permanent residents and they have part-time residents. And the part-times, everything is covered, sheets, pillowcases, china and everything. But that's not what Millburn is. And people want to come here on a short-term basis. We got hotels, we got motels, and we have 2 hotels, one existing and one coming up. They pay a lot of taxes to this town, and they will be paying a lot of taxes. And we ought to be protecting their rights to maintain a hotel and be licensed as a hotel instead of running unlicensed Airbnbs.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't see the clock, so I have to. All right, thank you. I can't see it, so.
That's unusual for a lawyer because it's so far hot air. We can warm a room.
Well, thank you for permitting public comments. I'm Bill Horvat. I live on 40 Whitney Road. And I would just like to, for the benefit of the committee and the attendees, to mention that I'm basically very supportive of Josh's initiative to have the Township Committee honestly consider an ordinance that would, in essence, how would I say it, assist in making it more difficult to, in essence, steal our resources. I've heard from children of our neighbors. I believe there's an example of a student who won an award and the school board did not require them to pay back tuition. And I would say this, with this, how to say, threat of taking of services, I like it to the recent crisis in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. When there was a shooter, we didn't ask the school board to come in and deal with the issue. We asked for the police. And this kind of a regulation would let the police do the kinds of things they do best, which is investigation. So I'd respectfully ask you to bring such an ordinance up for discussion by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Avenue. I would like to echo the same comments as the gentleman before me. I am in full support of what Josh Scharf has been bringing for many years to the school board's attention. Other representatives of the community have also brought to the attention of the school board with little real response that's been effective to deter this kind of behavior. We've heard, I know Sam and I served on the school board together many years ago. We heard these things back then, and it's beyond my comprehension that our community is not being protected from this type of behavior. I think we all, or most of us, have had children in the school. We are really supportive of our schools in this community, and we'd like to see every child get the resources fully committed to them on behalf of the taxpayers of the township, both those that have children in the school and those that don't. We'd like to see the schemes that clearly exist. I mean, we can all put our heads in the sand, but we know that there are people right on Work Mom requesting housing for students coming from overseas and so forth and so on. There's all sorts of people from different communities. I had a personal friend whose child was enrolled in the Millburn schools that I made sure was known to the superintendent. It's ridiculous. People just feel that they can come in here and do this with no repercussions. So I really hope that you'll take the request seriously and that you will act upon the suggestion that was made by Josh Scharf and this gentleman that spoke before. On the other matter regarding the short-term rentals, I believe the ordinance that was put before you, or the draft of it, is absolutely what we need and we would like. I just came from a meeting that's a newly forming group called West Hobart. It's a civic association that's just being started. I must have talked to, a couple dozen people. I told them I was leaving because I wanted to come to the meeting to talk about these two issues, and 100% of the people I spoke to are fully behind both of these ordinances. So thank you for listening. Appreciate your help.
You want to go? Go ahead. Okay, thank you. Josh Scharf, 11 Hawthorne
Do you
Road.
want to speak before other people get a chance? You want
Well,
another
I
3
don't know.
minutes?
Do you want to speak?
I think there's other people who should
Go
speak.
ahead.
Ed Mazer, Greenwood Drive in Millburn. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Township Committee for the action that it took restricting the uses that can be used for the property at the corner of Millburn Avenue and Vauxhall Road. Those actions will, I think, significantly limit the potential use of the property. It's my understanding that the Township Committee cannot zone a property into inutility, so that if somebody wishes to develop the property, I think that they would be entitled to reasonable variances for the property. The property is very problematic. The driveways are very close to the intersections on both streets. I'd like the Township Committee to look into the possible acquisition of that site. I think it was pointed out several meetings ago that the site was the site of the Battle of Springfield, and perhaps there's money which could be obtained from various sources to preserve and honor that. More importantly, the site floods very badly in heavy rains, and perhaps funding could be secured for flood remediation there, either as a surface detention basin or more preferably subsurface detention with large basins underneath. This would eliminate a lot of the problems, and if we can do it fiscally responsibly, it would add a little greenery and eliminate the potential development of the site and make the corner a little more attractive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scharf, please. A lot of people are here tonight who want to speak.
Janet Pizar, 186 Main Street. I'm going to read a statement. It clocked in at just over 4 minutes, so I beg your indulgence.
Janet, there's a lot of people here tonight. Let's keep it at 3, okay? Please. Thanks.
This is to give clarity to the mission to trim bump outs and restore a second traffic lane on Millburn Avenue. Approximately 15 years ago, Millburn began to carry the title of being pedestrian ugly. The 143 vehicle pedestrian collisions that included fatalities were the hard facts. There was a parkway zooming down Millburn's downtown, the areas of our community that is most pedestrian dense. I'm going to reference the item May 7th, 2015. There is a strong interest from the public in infrastructure improvements in order to make our streets safer. Reference the item June 11th, 2015. A 53-year-old Burnersville man was struck at the intersection of Millburn Avenue and Main Street. A 48-year-old man was struck and killed in the intersection of Essex and Main Street. I'm sorry, it's Millburn Avenue and Main Street, the first one. This prompted a local outcry for pedestrian safety in the municipality. Indisputably, something comprehensive needed to be done, and was. And now, that safety priority is being reversed for traffic expedience. A significant investment was made to prioritize the safety of pedestrians in the 0.4 of a mile from the identified gateway into town to the post office. Just 0.4 of a mile of calm traffic to ensure maximum safety in our downtown. Merchants are on record, referenced January 21st, 2016 item article, quote, "Downtown merchants look forward to complete streets," end quote. Later, some merchants became enraged during the construction and disruption to their businesses. A loudly voiced criticism by a small minority opined that the construction was bad, but the outcome was worse. Some merchants declared that with the calm traffic and crawl through what is 4/10 of a mile, no one wanted to come to or return to Millburn's downtown. We need to deal with facts, not fears, not vague impressions. Councilman Levy did an unbiased study comparing parking meter income from before and after complete streets. Objectively, there was little disparity and a small margin of increased income. Proof: drivers are not avoiding the downtown since complete streets, and new businesses have confidently come into town. The bump outs are not an obstacle. They are a dual strategy that vehicles cannot whip 90 degrees around the corner through the crosswalks where most vehicle and pedestrian collisions have occurred. And bump outs reduce the distance to cross streets and put pedestrians onto safer sidewalks more quickly. Vehicle pedestrian collisions in the downtown have virtually been eliminated. Now, the plan is to prioritize traffic expedience, directly contrary to the mission. Knowing that avoidance of our downtown is a myth, what is the point? Why lessen any of the safeguards that offer maximum protection for pedestrians? Taxpayer funds have already been invested. Without much hard evidence of a design flaw, how can township committee members deem that their changes, quote, "will be accomplished," unquote, without hard proof of a greater benefit and not just long-term prejudice and preference? Your fiduciary responsibility is suspect. Taxpayers will learn that their early investment for pedestrian safety is haphazardly being reversed by having to fund additional expenses to deconstruct the construction we already funded. Because of the long downtown blocks, pedestrians constantly jaywalk between parked cars and not the crosswalks. Perhaps township committee members have forgotten the safety presentation, that a pedestrian hit at 20 to 30 miles an hour is more likely not to result in a fatality than hits at 40 plus miles per hour. Again, unbelievably, after proof of a highly successful safety outcome, the priority has shifted to traffic expedience. Millburn's taxpayers, who are both pedestrians and drivers, are more than entitled to know objective, non-prejudicial, non-preferential, non-anecdotal reasons to justify this proposed wanton waste for what has been proven to be a successful project. Consultants can agree with you that modifications are
Janet,
doable.
thank you. Thank you very much.
If ever there was a merit for referendum, this is it.
Okay, thank you. Next, please. Just, okay. Sorry.
Hi, Deborah Nevis, 65 Nolan Road. So I was just over in Springfield at their information session on the redevelopment of the Saks property. And I missed a chunk of it, but what I did hear from their traffic expert was something like 70, they're predicting that 70% of the traffic in and out of that development will be on Millburn Avenue rather than on Morris Turnpike. So I'm wondering what kind of influence we have, given that we own, it's like 20 feet, what kind of influence we're going to have on what happens on the redevelopment of the Saks site. Because they're saying it's going to be 4 stories, pretty close to the sidewalk on Millburn Avenue. It's going to tower over that part of Upper Millburn Avenue. And I'm concerned, and I'm just wondering, we had a lot of success with the Stop and Shop, and I'm just wondering, you know, what kind of a say we get for what goes on there.
Well, I don't know, obviously I can't be at that meeting tonight. I know that that part of Springfield is zoned for 4 stories, that's their property. I don't know.
I would refer to Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think suffice it to say that members of the Township Committee have met with the governing body members in Springfield.
Okay, the microphone.
And are discussing this matter, and we're not at liberty liberty at the moment to reveal the substance of those negotiations, but it has not been overlooked by the Township Committee.
Okay, because it's going to have a huge impact on that area of town, which is already backing up from the Walgreens, and it's just my understanding that there's going to be a stoplight at Baltusrol now, so it's a lot, and obviously I'm a Chatham Road concerned citizen, so now Glenwood's going to be sandwiched with 225 plus residences on the Saks property, plus whatever's going on Chatham Road. So it's a concern, and just.
I don't know, so I know they're gonna have a back road out to Morris Avenue, but I didn't hear anything about the percentages of how they expect people to come in and out.
They said 70% off of Millburn Ave, and there will be no left turns out of the Morris Turnpike entrance and exit. So that, to me, means that there's going to be more pressure put on Milburn Avenue for people.
I'll have to really, Deborah, I'm sorry, I really have to get more details from them since they're presenting it tonight in Springfield.
Right,
Thank
so I'm
you.
just
Yeah.
asking that you.
I will.
I participate in.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
They say like the projection of breaking ground and something like this? Like, it's like it's 2 years. Just wondering, yeah.
2021.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, please, yes, hi.
Hi, my name is Ann Ludwig. I live at 46 Myrtle Avenue in Millburn, talking about the Airbnb. I've resided on Myrtle Avenue for the past 14 years. The section of Myrtle Avenue where I reside is a quiet residential street alongside the Wyoming Elementary School. Many of Wyoming School's 350 students pass by the Airbnb on Myrtle Avenue and Pine Street on their way to and from school. The Airbnb on Myrtle Avenue is located about 30 feet from the entrance to the Wyoming School, on the only side of Myrtle Avenue that has a sidewalk. Again, we spoke about this, the walking to school, the safe routes to school tomorrow. It's an active Airbnb. There are people there tonight. Again, it's a consideration when you have additional cars that are parked on that street. Aside from safety concerns due to transitional short-term rentals, the Airbnb occupants contribute to additional amounts of garbage, traffic congestion, and overflow parking from the home's driveway onto the sidewalk and onto the Myrtle Avenue Road. Wyoming students have to walk onto the road to get around the cars on a frequent basis. People who've stayed at this Airbnb on Myrtle Avenue uniformly rate the neighborhood around Wyoming School as beautiful, quiet, great neighborhood. These observations are very puzzling to people who live on that block since they're coming from transient occupants of a commercial operation. The occupants do not have reason to obey the local laws for garbage pickup or noise because they don't live there. Millburn needs to push back against properties being rented out as commercial operations. The Airbnb is an example of a person taking a very nice property, buying it, renovating it, and turning it into a lodging for as many people as they can put in there to extract as much income as they can in the middle of a neighborhood that was not zoned for that type of behavior. Overall, we need to preserve our housing stock, get bad landowners out of the way, and control homes that are used for commercial rentals where the owner is not living there. An absentee owner does not have the same interest or commitment in the neighborhood, so in the end, you face a threat to the fabric and the quality of life in that particular neighborhood. In New Jersey, local laws vary, but complaints about quality of life issues caused by short-term rentals are familiar. Westfield adopted a short-term rental policy last summer. Maplewood adjusted their regulations for residents who are at least 62 years old and older, so seniors could remain in their homes. Many towns in Bergen County have recently adopted short-term rental ordinances. In New York City, it is illegal to rent out a residence for less than 30 days. Short-term rentals are permitted only if the homeowner is also staying there throughout the rental period, and there are no more than 2 renters at a time. As noted, there are many examples of ways to placate all these local groups around here regarding the restriction of short-term rentals. At a minimum, consider developing an ordinance that would prohibit investors who do not live on the property from renting out the home for a short-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you. I like more paper.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Hames. I live at 71 Jefferson here in Short Hills. I'm recently retired, and I rent part of my house out as an Airbnb. So I happen to agree with your assessment in terms of there probably needs to be an ordinance for Airbnb, but from what I've seen or heard, the elimination of it, short-term rentals, to me is going way too far. I sent a letter back to the committee here on March 4th outlining my concerns and my issues and request to understand really what the due diligence has been done to really understand from a fact-based standpoint what are the real complaints, what's the impact on the community, and what does it really cause. I presented the argument that it's actually probably of a benefit to the community because the people that rent my place anyway, they actually use the local community for restaurant, for eating and dining and shopping. And most of them are here really, I'm gonna say the complexion of the people that visit the community here are really the same complexion of the people that live here. 80% of the people that have rented my room have been couples. Most of them are 40 to 50 or older. Most of them have lived here in the community. They've come here because it's a part of what they've done, lived here in the past. They're here shopping for a place for their kid to go to school because they're looking for colleges, or they're visiting their children in colleges. We've only had a few people that have rented in the 20s. So when I hear the noise and I hear the complaints about the risk and things like that, I don't see that complexion at all in terms of the people that have rented my Airbnb. And we actually enjoy the guests because, you know, I'm going to say my wife has actually gone out and walked the dog with them because they're fun. They're fun to be with. They're part of the community. The people that come to rent in Short Hills, they're not looking to party. Why would somebody come and rent a house in Short Hills? Why? If they're the kind of people that we hear about. I do have to agree, by the way, that if somebody's made an investment of a house, good, I got that time. They've made an investment in a house and they are not present, then that's probably something that's gone too far. But if they haven't and they're there and the homeowner is there when the renters are there, to me it makes total sense that you would allow that to happen. So anyway, I'm asking, number one is, what due diligence has been done? Are there really facts about what the concerns really are? That was a question that I asked. I never heard back on that in terms of, you know, is it just complaints that are coming in because of fears and speculation, or is it really fact-based? Haven't heard a response on that, nor have I seen any facts. And to provide a complexion of the people that rent my place, because I would say you would all enjoy them. They're all basically just like you in terms of who they are and the people that rent the place. Very few. And you'd enjoy meeting them because they're fun. When we actually enjoy the people, we've had dinner with them, we've walked the dog with them, and I don't see anything come out of the people that have rented my place that comes anywhere close to the kinds of complaints that you hear surface here. Okay, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Jennifer Duckworth, 82 Linden Street. I want to thank everybody for supporting transportation safety and pedestrian safety. I want to thank Tara for coming to the PTOC Safety Committee meetings, and she had announced that perhaps at this meeting there would be some kind of discussion about the proposed pedestrian safety Millburn Township-wide Safety Committee, and so
Okay, so did you just come a little late? 'Cause
yes,
in my
I did.
report, I
I'm
did
sorry.
say we are in the process. It's about
Sorry.
99% finished, and I have reviewed it. I'm gonna get the final draft to review.
Okay.
And it should be ready to talk about at the next meeting on
Okay,
May 21st.
great, thank you. Well, we are, or I am very excited to hear that, and thank you very much for considering it and putting it on the agenda for the next meeting. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, Phil Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street. I'm happy to hear about the progress being made with the, in the township and the state also about the ban of single-use plastic bags. And I just wanted to say that my wife and I found out there's some more options for recycling than we had thought. We got some packaging with a bunch of those air envelopes in it, like a whole bunch of them. And I just didn't want to throw them in the garbage. They have a little sign on that says howtorecycle.com. And I looked that up, and they mentioned businesses that will take not just plastic bags, but will take that plastic packaging. They'll take the wraps from things like toilet paper and cases of bottled water, any kind of plain plastic wrap like that. They mentioned ShopRite. I went to our ShopRite. They said, no, we just take the single-use plastic bags. I went to Whole Foods was mentioned, the Whole Foods in Springfield. They said, no, we just take the single-use plastic bags. I went to the Target that was mentioned that's on Springfield Avenue, and they have some bins up there, and they said, yes, these are for people from outside the store. You can bring any types of clean plastic of that type.
Yeah, the green team person did tell me that Target is a great receptacle for that.
So, and hopefully people, when they go there, maybe they'll do some shopping and Target will benefit from that. But we're gonna get a little receptacle for our kitchen and just keep a bag in it. I'm gonna put all those types of things in it starting in a couple of days. And then in addition to the reusable bags that we already started using and telling people we don't want a bag when we go to CVS or ShopRite, we're also gonna start taking that other plastic and just going over to Target maybe once a week and emptying the bag. And I feel good it's going to be that many more hundreds and hundreds of things that we're not going to put into the garbage. And so anybody else, when they start looking around for these options or pay attention to them, they're going to find that there are a lot of truly easy things they can do. Because I'm pretty lazy about this stuff, but they've made it easy enough for a number of these things that we can make a big difference, every single person who does that. So I just wanted to mention that, and thanks everybody who's pitching into this effort.
Yeah, it's really about changing habits. It's not that easy, but I think, you start small and you keep moving on.
Definitely.
Thank you, Phil.
Is it that time?
Well, I don't know. You already spoke, Mr. Scharf. Are you going to repeat the same message? Wait, Mr. Scharf, wait, seriously. Are you going to say the same thing?
No.
Okay, well, Ms. Bernstein would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Donna Bernstein. I live at 900 Ridgewood Road. My husband and I also rent out our spare bedroom through Airbnb. We've been doing that for several years now. It's been only a positive experience. Similar to what Scott talked about, we've made friends through this. We've had only the nicest people that you would want to be neighbors and friends with. We've never had any issues. They're usually traveling here to visit their family that live in town, attend a wedding, or for business. We've had many guests that have come repeat times. This one man comes from Paris, and he works at the Millburn Pharmaceutical Company, and he travels here for business, 2 or 3 times a year. We take great pride in our home and have invested a lot of money in our home as well. We would never do anything to jeopardize that. It is not a safety issue to our neighbors or to ourselves. We would never do anything to do that. As has been mentioned before, Westfield has already created sensible regulations that make perfect sense, and we should follow suit. It appears as if the biggest complaint is about noise and garbage and the house on Myrtle Avenue, and I understand that that may be an issue, and I think that we do certainly need to do something to fix that. We already have ordinances in place for noise and garbage, so those ordinances should just be enforced with that house. And then something just has to be done about that particular Airbnb. But there's no reason to prohibit Airbnb completely because of one house where it seems to be a problem. Thank you.
I ask that you indulge me and let me stand with my daughter.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leilani Westfall Kwong, and I live at 45 Mechanic Street in Millburn. I strongly believe that Airbnbs should not be banned. It's not fair that everyone in town should be punished for one person's disruptions. One house in town has been disrupting people, and although it's not kind to the people who live near the house, many people, such as myself, believe it might not be the best solution. This particular house is disrupting many people, and the solution that might come to many people's minds is to ban all Airbnbs. But here's the weakness. Other people might Airbnb their house with no problem at all. If you can do anything about this, I believe you should instead find the people who are causing this issue.
Thank you.
You can
Thank
hand
you.
one out to each of the
John, would you like to
council people.
finish the 3-minute?
Well, I think I get my own 3 minutes.
Oh, you get your own
but
3
I
minutes.
will
I wasn't sure if you were tagging.
Right. That's why I asked for your indulgence,
Oh, to
Chair, if I could stand
with,
with her.
sure. Take your
Yeah.
time.
But, so you can recount or whatever. Good evening, council members. My name is John Westfall Kwong, and I reside at 45 Mechanic Street. I am speaking today to express opposition of the new proposed ordinance to ban short-term rentals in Millburn Township. My family and I wholeheartedly agree that the safety of all town residents should be optimal concern, and have volunteered in various ways over the past decade to help ensure that shared values with the Township Committee. But we disagree that banning all short-term rentals is the best solution available. Airbnb has provided us with safe and effective means to rent our home when we're not using it on our holiday long break or parts of the summer. It provides a safe and secure way to screen potential guests, as well as provide picture ID and insurance to cover any potential damage. Guests provide ample information about themselves and guarantee payment prior to their stay. We have a deeper concern for safety and damage in our own home than even our neighbors do, and feel very comfortable with the Airbnb solution. Recently, we hosted a retired couple from Nashville who were here for 8 days over the holidays while visiting with family. While here, they were also able to be present for the birth of their first grandchild. We had a staff member who lives in town available for any emergencies or concerns. There were none. Child was a boy. Our experience and other experiences that I have heard regarding Airbnb guests is quite positive and aligns well with our other renters in town who are often learning more about the community and they may choose to live in the future. We are comfortable with our neighbors hosting Airbnb guests and also thoroughly enjoy our Airbnb experience in other locations. Please consider the impact our town's decision will have on other towns and cities like ours throughout the country and internationally. Do we think that other people and their governments will be so willing to share their homes with us if we're unwilling to do the same? Please consider an option that's a win-win for our town that also tackles the true potential safety issues rather than perceived issues. As shared with you, this was actually a while ago, the neighboring township Westfield has recently created an ordinance that balances safety issues with the needs of commerce. I don't think I was recounted, but I want to make sure. I still have like 45 seconds. We understand and appreciate the Township Committee wants to proactively prevent those who may be creating a safety or trash issue, but we ask that you not penalize the others who are willing to work within the system for the betterment of our town. Bernadine Wu forwarded options that other towns have implemented to address short-term rentals, and we are willing to work with you to come with a solution that addresses Township Committee's concerns while providing the opportunity for homeowners to share their residence with others. It makes total sense that if the township chooses to create more regulations, that rather than banning Airbnb rentals and other methods for short-term stays, consider having similar certificate of occupancy safety requirements that longer-term renters are provided by their landlords. Thanks for listening and thanks for your service.
Thank you. Oh, there's someone.
Hi, my name is Will Maddox. I'm 17 years old. I'm a junior here at Millburn High School. I've lived in Millburn, Short Hills all my life.
What's your address, please? I'm sorry.
40 Highland Avenue,
Okay.
near the train station. But yeah, I've lived here all my life, and I've always felt safe in the town, no matter what's been going on. And my mom's been doing Airbnb for a while now, and that hasn't changed. I've interacted with pretty much all the guests that come through. I've talked to them, and they're all good people. I've never felt threatened in any way by any of them. And I think I've honestly met some good people out of it. And waking up early at 6 a.m. in the morning for school, sometimes having someone around that's more company than just myself is not too bad. I've never met anyone that's bad. And the Airbnb has helped like my family come through a lot, especially when my parents divorced. And I just think it's something that you should consider as keeping.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ed Bernstein at 900 Ridgewood Road. My wife Donna just spoke about a number of issues regarding the Airbnb ordinance. I want to just focus on one thing, which are the guests that we've had while we've been doing Airbnb at our house. Just to really reiterate, we're always there because it's one. Our Airbnb is really just one bedroom in our house. So we're always there when our guests are there. Now those guests, I can tell you about a few of them. One is was an Asian woman that stayed with us for a few days. She was recently hired by a company in Millburn and was looking for a place to either rent or buy while she stayed with us. I haven't spoken to her since the time that she left, but she was a wonderful guest to have in the house. And I see her in shop right now. So she's clearly living in the neighborhood somewhere. We also have a guest from France that stays with us periodically, and he said that, of course, his company pays for his stay, but he doesn't want to stay at a hotel. He'd rather stay with a family that has a dog and a living room and a dining room where he can sit and have breakfast in the morning, and doesn't want the coldness of a regular hotel room. We had another 2 guests stay that they were actually looking to buy a home in Maplewood, and once they looked around and saw the area that they were looking at in Maplewood and saw what they could afford in Millburn, decided to buy a home in Millburn instead. All of our guests, of course, use all the restaurants and shopping that's in our town center. And I just want to emphasize to you that some people make it sound as if for some reason we're getting people that they're sloppy and they're messy and they're not to be trusted somehow, that they're burglars or pedophiles. I don't understand what they're talking about. The people that have always stayed in our home have always been the nicest people, and I just want you to understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're dancing. Give them a minute.
Hi again.
Hi.
Bernadine Wu, 40 Highland. In March 1st, I sent all of you a 6-page letter. Would you like me to read it now? Probably not. But I assume that everyone has read it, but I did not receive a response for it. I also spoke at the last council meeting, and the council committed to a 2-way dialogue and research and the inclusion of data and discussing alternatives, and I have not seen that. Maybe that's part of today's discussion, but we would like to be involved in that. We did send an invitation for that and did not get a response. I also sent another email over the weekend and did not get a response. So I can't imagine that the diligence has been done. I know you're not making a decision today, so again, I invite you to engage with us as well as meet your commitment of actually engaging with us. I provided in that letter not just perspective and opinions that mirror a lot of what was said here, and I could probably talk a lot about my guests, but data and perspective and real suggestions. We were the ones that provided the ordinances from other towns. Airbnb has offered to provide data to you. I shared data from Airbnb about again, facts around what we are renting and how few there is, how the age of the hosts are, and the types of people that the houses that are being rented here are single rentals, meaning it's not someone who's investing a lot. And again, everything could be
regulated around. So again, invite you to do that. We have not seen any logs of complaints or whether that's informal to the council. I have called the police department. I have pulled reports on my house, and others have as well. I would think that that's data that's important. So again, I just implore you to make fact-based decisions. There are conversations going around about, like on work moms, about sex offenders staying next door and so on. And I just think that, in a country where avoiding facts has become an art, I really think that we don't want to legislate on that kind of fear-mongering and data ignorance and, and fake news. And I don't think that that's what you guys are about, and I don't think that's what we're about. But it really is no different than building walls or, not putting up gun control or not really thinking about civil rights. I think we do want a government that looks out for our best interest. I don't think we want a government that mandates rules about our bodies, our lives, our children, our homes, and our properties. If so, then I think our residents should stop using Uber and Lyft and Airbnb when they travel, which this town uses a lot of Airbnb. So I think this is core to our government, our principles, and our ethics. And again, I don't think that this is who we are. There is sensible regulation that can be had. We've made some suggestions and proposals. There isn't a single complaint that I've ever heard or perspective that cannot be regulated or worked around. And I've heard way more perspectives that are just untrue and unfactual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody left who wants to speak?
I think it's me.
I think it's you.
Right. What a chatty group. Josh Sharf, Short Hills, 11 Hawthorne Road. One of the things that occurred to me while this was, I know nothing about Airbnb, but one thing I do know is about rentals. I own properties. The issue in terms of ineligible students and rentals and short-term and everything are really intertwined. And I'll explain. And here's an example, is that here is a person who lives in Summit and purchased a property at Lakeside Drive, which is right behind ShopRite, on 7/28/2011, in time to enroll his son into the high school. During this period of time, the younger sibling was still attending the Summit schools. The apartment was sold after the son graduated and, of course, got into Harvard in 12/23/2015. During that period of time, this apartment on Lakeshore Drive did not sit fallow. And there was multiple rentals, and all of them, or a good number of them, registering into the school system. The concern is really the abuse of township properties. And I've been here before talking about this as well. But the illegal conversions of properties into two families, or carving out a niche in it and renting it out for the purposes of enrolling a child into the school system. That presents kind of a bigger issue, and curiously, there are a number of towns, including West Orange and Clifton, I'm going to name just a couple, that have bundled their ineligible student ordinance with real estate and illegal conversion of properties, presenting a fine to those, a much higher level of fine, to those who intentionally scam the system. And here is a perfect example of it, right over here, which I'd be more than happy to hand over.
Give it to the clerk, please.
The clerk, please. So Airbnb is one issue. This is a much larger issue, and people are buying properties, they're renting it out to multiples. And you'll see around town right now, just like spring flowers, all the for rent signs are up. There's probably about 60 rentals in Millburn and Short Hills for properties that will be occupied by the time school begins again, because they move out and they move back in. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment?
I think I closed it for you.
You opened it, you closed it, thank you. You're like bookends. All right. The committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. The resolutions listed on the consent agenda for consideration are as follows. Bills list, authorized refund of tax overpayments, confirm appointment to Shade Tree Advisory Board, that's Mr. Dave Cosgrove, authorize Millburn tax collector to prepare and mail estimated tax bills, authorize township to participate in the North Jersey Cooperative Wastewater Cooperative Pricing System, authorize execution of storm sewer indemnification agreements, authorize Green Communities Grant application and execution of agreement, authorize rejection of bids received for the electronic message board, approval of fireworks display for 4th of July, authorize extension of township to continue with municipal pipeline group, authorize the acquisition of an easement agreement by the township of Millburn by Park Road, authorize privilege to be waived for attorney-client privilege document, approve taxi livery licenses, approve sidewalk cafe licenses, and approve raffle licenses. Are there any comments from the committee or public in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda only? Anybody? Okay, may I have a motion to approve, excuse me? I didn't, no one raised their hand. I did. I asked the public. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda? May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bursty?
Yes.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mary Phil Eglo?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the committee pertaining to Resolution 19126? This is to rescind the adoption of the Downtown Millburn Development Alliance 2019 budget, just the budget, not rescinding the whole DMDA. Are there any questions from the committee that you have for the attorney?
No
Everyone's good on this? Okay. Yes. May I have someone move this, 19126? What? Excuse me?
I move to approve.
You moved to approve, I couldn't hear you. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call?
Ms. Bursty?
Yes.
Mr. Levy?
Abstain.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mary Phil Eglo?
Yes. Okay. 2019 budget public hearing, consideration of adoption. Public hearing of the budget, Resolution 19127. The state has approved the township's budget, therefore the governing body may consider, guys, Mr. Scharf, please, may consider the 2019 budget this evening. The 2019 budget was introduced by the Township Committee at the April 2nd meeting. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 19127, which authorizes the township to read the 2019 municipal budget by title?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Bursty?
Yes.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mary Phil Eglo?
Yes.
Thank you.
I hereby open the public hearing for any comments on the 2019 municipal budget. Once all comments are heard, we close the public hearing. Any comments? Any questions? Township Committee? Yes. No, you gotta come up. Gotta be mic'd.
Just something I had noticed in many, many other governmental meetings. You just voted on it, and then you're calling a public hearing. It seems like a point of order, because now whatever
No, we're gonna adopt
public-
it after this.
Did you do a vote?
We voted on the title
Which
of it.
was
Right.
to allow it to be read by title.
Right.
Then there's a hearing, and then the budget comes for adoption in a separate resolution.
Okay. Somebody wanna move 19127? I have to I closed the hearing. What's next?
Well, we did 127, didn't we?
Okay, so we're good?
I move 19-128, resolution to adopt 2019 municipal budget.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mayor Thigala?
Yes. Okay, we have 2 matters of old business. I have a statement to read. Under the Open Public Meetings Act of 1973, municipalities are required to designate at least 2 print publications as those that will receive and publish paid notices of public meetings. Millburn Township designates both the Item and the Star Ledger as required by law. To date, the state has not yet addressed online news sources in this manner. As the committee may remember, the township solicited proposals for online news sources as a result of this formal procedure being followed in the past. I would like to recommend that the township forego this formal procedure. I recommend the township allow all interested news sources at any time to request to be added to our distribution list to be provided township information in the form of public notices and press releases. I would like to emphasize that current practice of online news sources receiving notice from the township would not be changed. In an effort to be inclusionary to all local news sources, I simply do not think the township should single out one online news source over another. This would afford all news sources the opportunity to be added to our distribution list at any time. If there's interest from a news source to be added to our notice distribution list, that news source may simply contact the municipal clerk. As a township, we are communicating in many different ways. We have our website, Facebook, Twitter. And people on Facebook, there's many Facebook groups that share information what's going on in town. I urge our community to continue to visit our social media outlets to obtain relevant township information, documents, and notices. I thank all those who disseminate township notices and information as valuable participants to increase resident engagement through transparency and communication. What is the consensus of the committee on this matter? If anyone would like to talk about why we're doing this.
Doing what?
Just not having TAP or Patch as a dedicated online news source. We have the Item and we have the Star Ledger, and that is what's required by law. And that's what it should
I
be.
have a question for the township
Kit,
attorney.
please.
Mayor Eglo, in her statement, if I understood it right, cited that the law provides that we have to have 2 sources of public dissemination of information, both in print.
Correct.
I'm
At
asking,
least 2
I'm asking
print.
Mr. Falcone.
Oh.
Is that accurate, Mr. Falcone?
Yeah.
That the law requires that those sources, as currently written, the law requires them to be in print?
Yes, the law requires that at your reorganization meeting at the beginning of the year, you designate 2 newspapers to serve as official newspapers of the township. And
Okay.
you use those papers to publish legal ordinances and other notices that need to be published.
In the statute, does it require those 2 sources to be in print?
Well, it's the only method that's provided.
Well,
The law.
Newspaper is defined in many ways today, including digital. So that's why I'm wondering whether we have the legal option, given the language of the statute, to identify print and/or digital as the dissemination sources to comply with the law.
The law, when this first came up, the thought of the township committee at the time was perhaps we ought to use additional means by which to get information out. But the statute only addresses newspapers. It probably should be amended to catch up with the times so that online services could be used for that purpose, but it's been uniformly interpreted to mean the newspaper in its traditional form that we see it, that it comes out in print.
Well, I'm sure the New Jersey Star Ledger would disagree that it's only a print newspaper, but that doesn't really answer my question. So as I understand Mayor Eglo's presentation, that we should adhere to the traditional interpretation of the dissemination being 2 print newspapers and not adopt an official digital dissemination source, though we do have the option to do that, right? We do have the option. We're not precluded from also adopting more sources for dissemination, correct?
Yeah, when this first came up, I said, you know, if you're going to designate an online service to carry your information. This really ought to be subjected to a competitive process, that to just pick out one confers a benefit on that online service to be able to advertise itself, so to speak, as the designated online news service of Millburn. So the township went through a process of soliciting proposals and designated for that 1 year an online news service to be the designated news service. But that's literally as a supplement to what is required, which is to have 2 newspapers.
So, but my question is, the law requires us to print no less, to designate no less than 2 newspapers, according to how you framed it. But it doesn't preclude us from identifying 5 newspapers or 4 digital sources as official dissemination sources, right? We have the option to do that if we want to do
I
that.
think as long as you do the minimum required, you could use as many online services as you would want. And I think, I was not familiar with the statement, but I think you solicited any such service
Right,
that
so
wants to carry
As it stands now,
Millburn information to
right,
do so.
they are on a list. The clerk sends out an email blast to anyone who wants to share information, and they're not prohibited or they're not forced to do it. We don't charge. They don't have to show us a copy of what they have put out on their site. Whereas the Star Ledger and the Item have to give us a copy of what they've printed for legal reasons.
Well, they give you a proof
A
of
proof.
publication.
They give us,
publication.
they give us just
Yeah.
proof of
Yeah.
publication, they don't give us the actual
No, right.
publication. Right.
So, yeah, so it's just to make it clear that there's no official designated online source at this point.
I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Did we designate an online source
In
in
the
January?
past, no, we did not.
So what, so we don't have a designated online source?
We don't, but there was an RFP and we never followed through on it, so just to say that we are not following through on that, there will be no designated online source. Correct? Is that what we?
Why do we have to say
Yeah.
that we're not designated someone if we're not obligated to designate a digital source? Online's not accurate, a digital source.
Because there is
This seems to be.
confusion if somebody is self-designating themselves as an official source.
So you want to inform TAP or some other organization to the extent that it identifies itself as an official source that it's not?
Correct. Okay?
All right, well, that's the real purpose behind this, right? To
Nobody should be-
publicly inform or privately inform digital sources who proclaim that it is a official dissemination source of the Millburn Township, that it in fact is not.
Correct.
That's the purpose of doing this.
Correct, Committeeman Levy. That is very succinct.
I
Okay,
think that
so
you should have framed it that way.
I wanted to give a 3-paragraph reading instead. It's good.
I did it in 2 sentences, so.
Okay, you're an attorney, you're terrific. Okay. All right, we have another piece of old business, short-term rental. If any committee people would like to start the discussion on that, please, you have the floor.
It's your baby.
Friends and constituents, as a member of the Township Committee, I had introduced the ordinance to prohibit short-term rentals in the township. The issue was brought to my attention in November when I attended the municipal convention in Atlantic City and learned that there were many listings for short-term rentals in Millburn and Short Hills, including a home that was used exclusively for short-term rentals. I believe it continues to be a burden on residents in the neighborhood regarding safety, noise, garbage, and vehicle congestion. Some residents who engage in short-term rentals cite the benefit of these additional income, gratifying experiences, meeting new people, and the absence of safety concerns. These residents regularly remark about Airbnb's hosting policy and how trustworthy it is. Let it be known that that our own township administrator had spoken with a host compliance service that let it be known that there are approximately 40, how many sites, Alex, that they were vetting? 45?
53 sites.
53 sites similar to Airbnb that where transient renters can utilize to see where opportunities are for short-term rentals. I continue to believe that the negativity of short-term rentals are the safety issues and loss of community, having strangers coming and going at all different hours, loss of knowing your neighbor feeling, the unknown of knowing who is at your next door neighbor's house. These individuals are transient. I don't believe they have a priority of interest in maintaining our schools or our local institutions. Noise and nuisances. Renters may not abide by the same courtesies as longstanding residents. I think what Ms. Ludwig shared with us is a prime example of a situation that is untenable. Must deal with additional trash and on-street parking issues. I believe residential zoning is at risk. It creates a potential for turning residential neighborhoods into boarding house strips. If the economy turns, we run the risk of our residential area becoming a zone for commercial activity. I also believe that property values will be negatively impacted if a home resident is frequently occupied by transient individuals. Currently, there are no public oversight or accountability for short-term rentals. There's no licenses, there's no permits, there's nothing required by the renters or the occupants. They pay no local taxes. In order to ensure public safety, the township would have to hire code enforcement officers. We'd have to have regular fire inspections to ensure safety, and both of these would require additional staffing by the township. Who will bear that cost? Ultimately, I believe it is the taxpayer. Another burden on an already overtaxed citizenry. In summary, I believe the continuation of short-term rentals in Millburn, Short Hills would transform our quiet, established residential community into a revolving door of potential strangers who do not have the same concerns as our residents. I only ask one question. Would you want to live next door or across the street from a home that is occupied by people who are unknown to you and are one's neighbor in a series of ever-changing strangers? And more importantly, would you want to buy a house or sell your house? Would you want to buy a house next to a neighbor that is occupied by transient individuals? I just want to mention a couple of other things. Christine Gaddy has been collecting information from residents, their emails on there. I had sent the previous ordinance that was tabled and asked people to feel what their feelings were. And through May 7th, there were 33 responses. 30 were in favor of opposition to opposing short-term rentals. 3 were in favor, including some of our residents that were here. I just want to share a couple of things with you that were said. Our next door neighbors bought the house next to us years ago. They've never lived there. We have new tenants nearly weekly, mainly every weekend. It's akin to a hotel. It's quite disconcerting to see different strangers with no connection to the neighborhood living next door to you. Not knowing garbage rules, especially when you have kids. Not knowing garbage rules, etc., especially when you have kids who play outside. A home is often the largest investment as an individual, and the value may diminish if a property home is known to be utilized for short-term rentals on an ongoing basis. The township must protect the property values of all residents. Safety. I strongly believe that is a paramount concern. By shoving short-term renters in a residential neighborhood, these renters are unknown to the neighbors in the community. It's disruptive, it's unsettling, and I believe poses a potential safety issue. These are comments that have been sourced from the documentation that was provided. I just also want to mention one other thing, and I'll open it up to my fellow committee members. The towns that have banned a full Airbnb, no short-term rentals, and I keep saying Airbnb, and I want to make the distinction. It's not just Airbnb. Airbnb may do a very good job at protecting both the renter, both the host as well as, but there's a whole series of others, couch surfing, VRBO, home away, that may not have the same vetting process. And that's something that concerns me because we don't have the mechanism to be looking at all this this hosting traffic, if you will. Just want you to know that the towns that have banned completely are towns, in my opinion, that share a similar demographic and community sensibility, and they include Ridgewood, Cresskill, Glen Rock, Closter, Wyckoff, Woodcliff Lake, and then others were mentioned in Bergen County: Paramus, Palisade Park, East Rutherford, Fort Lee, Fairview, Ridgewood, I mentioned, and Metuchen.
Thank you. Any committee members have any comments?
Sure, I'll weigh in. I don't really know where I come out on this, I'm not married either way, but someone mentioned that we should consider facts, something that I think is always important in these discussions. Airbnb, I looked today, was founded in August of 2008. So it's been around a little more than 10 years. Alex mentioned that there are 53 websites currently that publicize or advertise short-term rentals in Millburn. And 53 sounds like an ominous number because it's meant to convey that there's real transient activity going on in Millburn. But I think it conveys the opposite, because if Airbnb has been around for more than 10 years, and its copycats have been around for roughly that long, and there are 53 current ways that you can find a Millburn short-term rental, and we only have a handful of complaints over that entire period of time with that enormous amount of web activity enabling people to find Millburn, it seems to me that this may be a solution in search of a problem. I recognize the woman has complaints about her particular neighbor, and we received a graphic from the clerk that had other complaints too. But there are a handful of complaints given all this various activity. So does that warrant making a change? Well, we've heard today from people from different parts of Millburn, I was trying to capture the addresses, where they have Airbnb activity or similar website activity. And they spoke about all the nice people who navigate through their home, and frankly, that's of no moment to me. Whether they're nice or not nice doesn't move me in any way. Whether they shop here or don't shop here may be helpful, maybe they shop here sometimes, maybe they don't. I don't know what their motive is. None of that moves me in any way. But what is important is many of the people spoke eloquently about how important it is to them, some for personal reasons, that they have Airbnb activity in their homes for personal reasons. It benefits them in some ways. They enjoy the company. They enjoy the activity. They enjoy walking their dog, someone said. They enjoy having dinner with these people and meeting different people from around the world. Others, more importantly, it's important to them because they gain revenue out of it. Everyone has their different situations about why. I don't know that we as a township committee should stand in judgment or stand in the way of somebody renting out a home, renting out a room or a series of rooms in order to allow that person to continue to live in Millburn. It may be that some of the Airbnb, and I'm using that as a collective term, that some of the Airbnb hosts rent out their homes, rent out their rooms, because that's the only way they can stay in Millburn. Maybe they can't afford it for other means. Perhaps they're divorced, perhaps they're widowed, perhaps other economic conditions have befallen them in some way. And I think that we have to be open to that. But I perhaps have a compromise that I would submit that we consider. All of the proponents of today, at least in the statements, all the proponents had one thing in common that the opponent didn't have in common, and that is they all live in the home. So their Airbnb activity takes place with them in the home. They have a vested interest, of course, in maintaining the integrity of their home with their Airbnb visitors. I think the woman who opposed it and others who oppose it, it seems to be that those homes are not owner-occupied, or at least not majority owner-occupied. So one compromise may be to require that the Airbnb activity requires the host owner to live or declare that the property is their primary residence. Now, how are we going to enforce that? I don't know. it's not my job, it's not my desire to put more money, or to put more effort, which will cost us more money, onto Alex in the police. And also with regard to, you know, we're discussing a 31-day or 32-day, anything less than that you can't do. How are we gonna enforce that either? I mean, if we do it at 31 days and there's Airbnb activity for less than 30 days, how do we enforce that? We're not dispatching the police to anyone. There may be reports from neighbors, but there's really no practical way to enforce it. You're not gonna knock on a door and say, let me see your Airbnb contract. A, the person doesn't have to produce it, they have rights of privacy, and B, the police can't even ask for it. So we have enforcement issues as well too. So my compromise would be to any limitation that we put on Airbnb activity, again, using that term collectively, that if the resident is owner occupied, that we visit whether those restrictions should apply to them vis-a-vis those who have residents that are not owner occupied. That concludes my comments for now.
So, you know, I'm listening, I've talked to Jackie, I've read comments, and I'm also sort of not sure where I come out on this. And part of it is, I think there's a problem with houses that are wholesale rented out in an Airbnb fashion, but where people are at home and renting out for a weekend, it seems like there's control over it, and that's what the concern is here, the lack of control of what happens in the property. And I come out more like Sam does on this issue. I think in fairness to our residents, I don't think there's a wholesale answer to anything, to just find a solution or create a problem for a solution. And that's really what I see here, is that we have an ordinance that probably is a sledgehammer over something that is not as big a problem as some people want it to seem like.
Tara, before I go on, do you want to share anything?
I kind of agree with Cheryl and Sam at this point, and think that it can't be like a total elimination of all rentals, and that we should probably talk, I mean, we're not voting on it right now, we're just
Right.
discussing it, so,
Okay, so we did receive at first a lot of letters saying full outright ban. Then we received a lot of letters from people saying, please consider some other reasons. And most of the letters kind of gave the same idea. Requiring homeowners to be home while renting, this is kind of a combination. Allowing only rental of the owner's principal residence. Maximum 1 room, 2 guests. Somebody suggested limiting the total number of nights per year. I don't know how we can do that, but we can get to that in a minute. Requiring homeowners to provide parking on their property, which is very important because we cannot park past 2 o'clock in the morning. Requiring some type of registration or permitting process. Now, what's important about this is there is this service. So right now there's 53 sites, and there's this service, and we've only had 19 hits in Millburn Township. And I don't know how many, maybe you can tell me how many were single rooms and how many were whole house. So that service costs $3,000 a year, and it's $15 for every hit they get. So by requiring some registration, you recoup, we didn't recoup the chicken money because no one has, honestly, but I think to put that about the chickens, we did not do a wholesale ban chickens. I think we took a really long time and we really talked about what would be fair to the few people who wanted to keep chickens. And we spent a lot of time doing it. And I think this is not an emergency, it's not an urgent situation, and I feel that we need to really look at it. And for the 19 in town, do you know how many were single homes and how many were 1 rooms?
No, just maybe to give some information regarding my conversation with the company Host Compliance was really a sales call, which they were able to give some particulars, but of course to dive a little bit deeper into the information, the data sets, they would like the township to purchase their product.
Of course, and I think if we ban this or not, we have to purchase that product, because we don't know what's going on. So I think from what I'm hearing is I think, Ms. Ludwig, you were complaining about this a couple of years ago. I think it was my first year on township committee, and we had no mechanism except the code enforcer to go in and find them. that person does not live in that house. He's renting out a whole house. And I think that is the problem. And I think I spoke to the Livingston current mayor and last year's mayor, and they had the same situation. Some young gentleman was left his parents' home, and he didn't want to live there, so he was renting it out for full all-out parties, and it was a nuisance. But Livingston is also taking their time, and they're saying, wait, for one bad person, why should we punish the entire town? So they're also looking at it and deciding what route to take. And I think that is where I'm gonna fall out on this. Let me see what else. So, oh, and as far as the towns out with Airbnbs, the fire, even like down the shore, I think it was Asbury Park, they don't have the fire marshal going in there every time there's a turnover. That would be impossible. And that's a shore town where they're probably Airbnb all the time. And there was something, I think, was it in Maplewood, a carve out for senior citizens? I didn't understand that. That was
I
the.
think it's required
It's
by.
Maplewood.
Yeah,
And it's a carve-out for senior citizens over 62 years of age.
But Maplewood's not banning it. I spoke to the mayor. They haven't done
So
anything yet.
it's actually a state law that
Oh.
senior citizens are allowed
Allowed
to.
for over 62.
Right, so Maplewood hasn't done anything on this yet either. So what I would like to do is take a little time. We can decide which way the committee would like to instruct Kit if we want to go with that ordinance, what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow. And so personally, I'm not for an all-out ban. I think that's like an overreach. So that's where I stand, and it seems that's where you
That's where I
stand. So do we want as a committee, oh, what?
I'm sorry, maybe just make a suggestion if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
In terms of, if that is the direction that the committee wants to go to, further the research that we've done and in drafting, a possible ordinance, but also, engage with, possibly, the host compliance company to be able to get, that information, use that information to make, sort of sound decisions as we draft that ordinance.
Right, but do we want to instruct, as a committee, instruct our law firm to start looking at some rules and regulations, right? You want to hire compliance first, you're suggesting?
Yes. I mean, I'm suggesting that from a standpoint that it would need to be done anyway, and then you would be able to get data about the municipality and what's happening, to your point about single family versus two family, and be able to use that information as you draft.
And how would that regulation, would it stipulate the size of the room and based on square footage? How do you one room could be a loft room that could be 1,000 square feet? Is that limited to 2 people? Or is that, would that be the legislation that the committee members would say based upon room size? Or, and owner occupied means that the owner would have to be there the whole time? That
No, the owner lives, that is their
No,
primary
but with the
property.
owner occupied, as the Bernsteins, they're in the home when the guest is there. So there would be no allowance.
How is this all gonna be regulated?
Well,
Who is
well, this-
enforcing this?
Well,
Well, that's why we have a lawyer who's gonna draft it.
But, I
but
mean.
what happens, right, so what
who's
happens
gonna-
if somebody goes away for the weekend and says, let me throw this up on Airbnb, and what happens? What happens?
I think.
And what happens to the neighbors that see? So, I mean, that's my question. How is this going to give comfort to the people that are seeing strangers in their neighborhoods or concerned about the transient nature of people that they don't know? How are we gonna enforce this owner-occupied scenario? I don't know. Are they gonna have to register with the township every time somebody comes in?
No, they
I'm just asking.
my suggestion was it's their primary residence, that's it. They don't have to be there
But-
every second, I'm sure the
What if they go
Bernsteins
away?
aren't there every minute that their guests are there. I
But what
mean,
if they go away for the weekend
Then they're free to go away for the weekend.
and rent their home to somebody who they don't know, and
If it's
have-
their primary residence, they can do with it as they choose, and I also would object to any X persons per X square feet either. I mean, who are we to tell people what commerce they can undertake, legal commerce they can undertake
So it could be 2
vis-a-vis
people
square
or 10
feet.
people?
Well, it's their house.
It's their home.
Primary residence.
Yes.
So it could be 2 people or 10 people?
I don't know that most people can.
I'm just asking how it how you would envision that kind of regulation.
I think sort of sorry to interrupt, but maybe the more important thing is sort of understanding the direction, and that there will obviously be further discussion on this, and the things that we're able to now, having a direction in terms of where the committee would like to go. I'll be able to compile further review of the committee going forward.
We can, but I'm not sure what host compliance actually does. Alex, I'm going through this brochure they sent you. What does it actually do, other than provide existing data?
Well, that's.
But we already know that.
So-
Fine.
so-
We just
so-
got the free existing
so-
data for them, so why do we have to
No,
hire
I
them?
think it's a little bit further than that, and I'm not suggesting that host compliance that's one company that we've
There's
spoken to.
multiple companies, but-
Sure, but I think the idea there is that from an enforcement standpoint, host compliance allows, what they do is they scrape data from those 53 sites.
And they tell you where Airbnb activity is going on. So you're gonna dispatch the police and fire there and knock on the door and say, that you can't even do that. So what's the purpose of having them? As I read this brochure in 1 second, all this company does, and companies like it, is inform you where Airbnb activity is taking place at any given moment. It allows you that access.
Well-
And then, so what do you do with that? You can't dispatch police to knock on the door for code enforcement.
Well, you can certainly alert individuals if they're in violation of a code based on the packet that's developed for you from the company.
Well, that assumes that we have, X persons per square feet and all that kind of stuff.
That assumes.
And then you'd have to have that database, and then, let's say they put my residence in there. So, the township doesn't know how many square feet
I don't think I
square
result in
feet my,
square feet, Sam. I think it's rooms
rooms
versus
are?
renting a whole house that you don't live in. Renting your house for a party weekend. I think it's the difference if you're renting a whole home or you're renting a room. That's what the data will tell you.
It seems incumbent upon me that we give direction to, we conclude as a committee what it is we want to do in terms of terms and the conditions of a regulation, if any, and then gather data to the extent we need it and direct Kit to engage in ordinance writing.
I also have one question. Do we, in this data collection, do we limit the amount if somebody wants to have an Airbnb next to you on a, 30 days, 60 days? I mean, there's some regulation that I read that limited the amount of days, or is it unlimited? And is there any kind of collection? Is the township gonna collect a fee to deal with this additional impact?
I don't think it can. I don't think it's constitutional to do
Yeah, I
that.
think New Jersey said they can't, there's an overall tax to Airbnb, but you can't tax the homeowner.
Cannot.
Right,
Well, wait a minute.
I don't think.
A number of the ordinances that
Registration.
Jesse collected
Mhm. Kind
had, if you want to engage in this, you register.
Right.
And you file in connection with that registration. So those are
That's not a tax, though.
homes.
It's a
No,
registration.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So there is a fee collected by the municipality, which would hopefully address the expense to which the municipality is put to enforce it. I mean, that's, the general rule for establishing municipal fees is that a municipality is entitled to charge a reasonable charge which roughly matches the expense to which it is put to offer the particular program or regulatory regime or whatever. So that's, I think, where the registration would come in and the collection of a fee.
Right.
So the registration fee is paid by the homeowner. And what about the, is it a flat fee, or is it a sliding scale based upon the amount of occupancy?
Well, from this one, it's a one-time fee. It looked like there's a one-time registration fee
Per year.
And then if the fire marshal of the house is checked upon, one time. They do not go in there for every single turnover.
I have a question. How are the complaints of the one house being dealt with?
From a
So-
code compliance. Code compliance.
So, and how often, how often is that house being addressed? So if people are making complaints.
There's multiple houses.
Well, let's just talk about like the one house by the school. People are calling. It's still going on. Are you out there every week? Are you out there once a month? Like, how often is this happening?
I would say that in general, it's infrequent, but it is consistent with that particular home. In other words.
But infrequent's what? Like how many, what's infrequent? Twice a year? 6 times a year?
I don't have specific numbers per year, but again, giving the committee the number of complaints that we've received in terms of properties, the number of properties that have been complained about.
But you only listed 2 in the memo you sent us. So there's 2 properties that have gotten complaints, but we don't have any of the data about how many complaints or how they're being enforced or how the township's addressing that right now, the ordinances that we already have set in place.
What I conveyed to the committee was that one is being dealt with from a code compliance standpoint, which is the trash and hanging of laundry on the front porch, whatever it is. Okay?
But how many times? I'm just trying to get a sense of like
I don't have that number right now.
I think it's important for us to have that number.
Okay, I will share that number over the last 5 years that maybe that home that has been in existence 4 or 5 years.
Great.
I'd also like the data on that other home also that has come to mind.
But I think it's also important, for the committee to understand that also sometimes when complaints happen, it's not as if the complaint, whether if it's the police that's responding, they go out and they make note that, oh, are you a short-term renter? They're usually going there as a result of whatever the call may be. So from a police perspective, there's not complaints. These are going to be from a code.
But we're talking about 2 particular houses that have already been addressed as being short-term rentals.
From code
so
compliance.
We can get the information on those 2 houses.
Correct.
And to see how the township's already addressing the ordinances that are already in place.
Correct.
Great.
Right, like
I'd like to see all that.
Have those houses been fined?
Before we continue this discussion, I think we should have that information.
To the extent that there's been any enforcement
Exactly,
warranted. So that,
right, that's true.
A complaint doesn't mean that there's enforcement of anything. So.
True.
Great.
When a home, I have a question also. When a home is rented, isn't there an inspection that they have to go in and look at fire and smoke detectors and things of that nature? Are you gonna, that's something else that I think has to be addressed, because if people are staying, egress windows and things of that nature, if a basement or a room, wouldn't those all have to have a whole nother layer of now code enforcement with respect to safety issues?
Why? The family's already in there under our
But the family
scheme.
may not be sleeping in the basement.
But the house has to be code compliant anyhow. If they're already living there, then.
Well, no, it
it's code
doesn't. No, it
compliant.
doesn't. It's code compliant for the people that live upstairs. What if it's a situation where they're renting they've converted their basement, and now they're having guests there? Who is gonna look at that? I'm just asking the question. Are we gonna have a separate code enforcement officer, dedicated to Airbnb? Because I think this could be a situation where we're gonna have to hire additional staffing from a township issue to address this.
If my in-laws visit me for 3 weeks and I put them somewhere, do I have to have the police and fire come to?
No, they're your family members.
So we care less about them than we do.
That's up to you.
We care less about them than we do an alleged transient visitor?
All right, so I think what we should do is we're gonna get more information, we're gonna get more data. We are going to continue this conversation. Like, I do not think it's an emergency. I don't think anyone would here think it's an emergency.
I think it's an emergency for Anne. I do. I think what she's had to endure is untenable. I do.
But she has remedies and she's affected those remedies.
Okay.
Are we gonna?
Yeah, just, only because Jackie addressed you, Ann, I'm just gonna let you just respond because she addressed you by name. Please.
No, we're talking about various people who come in, so you can't quantify, you know, whether or not there's excess trash. But if you go to places like Airbnb and you read the reviews on this particular house, and you notice that every April, the same group of families come to celebrate, and then the garbage mounts.
Right.
Went there recently, and the woman says, this is the greatest house, whatever, but the person who owns the house does not tell the residents that garbage day is Friday, and things start piling up on Wednesday with insufficient cans and start spreading all over the neighborhood. That's when I complain, when the animals are getting into
Right,
the
so
garbage.
we'll look up and we'll get the amount of complaints, we'll see what's been done. Okay, so,
Are we gonna talk about the regulating school? No, okay.
yeah, no,
Just
it's on the
asking.
agenda, it could be
Alright.
another day.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Okay, so wait, I just wanna say one thing to everybody. Okay, yes, first of all, it is Teachers Appreciation Week, so please appreciate your teachers. Tell your kids to thank them for all they teach them. It is Mother's Day, so appreciate your mothers. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All right, we are adjourned. Dinner time. Dinner time. Dinner time. All right. Hammer time.